students, I'm Himani Sharma, your educator. I warmly welcome you all on our YouTube channel where we in today's video are going to talk and discuss about new historicism. Now, this is one such field which emerged near the 1980s, if we try to talk about it, and the major proponent of this particular field is known by the name Stephen Greenblatt. Now, the name itself is somewhere or the other, the name itself is trying to talk about how during this particular, time frame, we also see other theories also emerging. Now, literary theory in English literature holds a very important place because of this particular thinking and thought process which comes across with new historicism. Now, how come is that? Let's just try to first of all talk about the introduction that I have in here. New historicism is a literary theory that emerged in the late 20th century, I told you, 1980s, rooted in the works of scholars like Stephen Greenblatt. What is the focus here? The focus is in examining literature in historical and cultural contexts. Now, this is very important. Whenever any piece of literature you read, हम majorly क्या करते हैं? हम उस piece of literature को उस age में तो रख के देखते हैं, but are we also reading other pieces of literature from the same age to see if both the works are having some sorts of similarities as far as the history or society of that particular century is concerned. अगर मैं कोई modern age का novel पढ़ रही हूँ या अगर मैं कोई Victorian age का novel पढ़ रही हूँ, am I also making sure that if I'm reading that particular novel and if I randomly pick two particular writers from Victorian age, are there certain similarities where the historical things are there? जो वहाँ की settings अगर कोई writers choose कर रहे हैं, are they similar from one another, similar to one another, right? So here literature is going to be used as a field here, right? Literature and context. Believe that literature is embedded in historical and cultural context. What kind of context? Any culture can be ruling there. अगर मैं शेक्सपियर के टाइम की बात करूँ, तो जरूरी नहीं है ना कि शेक्सपियर ने whatever he has written is only the sole truth. But if I read certain other things that are there, if I read the core text rather than the context, पूरा मुझे context नहीं समझना है, I just need to have, let's just say if I have one mainstream book of Shakespeare, I'm reading Macbeth, Hamlet, somewhere or the other, and or maybe I'm reading The Taming of the Shrew by him, and I am picking up certain other works of the same age as Chaucer, Shakespeare. और अगर Chaucer की भी बात करें तो उस time पे भी if I'm picking up certain things from there, are they the ones which are standing in line with one another as far as the history and culture of that particular age is concerned? अगर एलिजाबेथन के टाइम की बात कर रहे हैं तो एलिजाबेथन के टाइम पे भी also started seeing lots and lots of travel happening. ठीक है, तो वो चीज हमें दिख रही है. The treatment of women, how they are treated in the works, is that similar? Because there were certain laws, there were certain rules and regulations during those times. Can we see that? उन texts को we call them as core texts, that are something which are acting as supplementary or extra material to support what we already have in the mainstream literature. So one thing which I'm trying to make sure here is that you need to be aware that here literature is only not important. सिर्फ और सिर्फ एक mainstream, अगर आपने किसी normal हम वहाँ के एक mainstream writer का नाम उठा लेते हैं, if we try to talk about Jane Austen, if we try to talk about Charles Dickens, if we pick up their name, it is not solely important that that writer, whatever they are mentioning in their works, is the sole truth. To make sure that writer is telling the sole truth, we have to refer to other texts that we know as by the name co-text. Reciprocal influence is there. How literature is something which influences and is influenced by history and culture of an age. If a writer is associated, जैसे मिल्टन के टाइम पे there was Puritanism which was also coming. So because of the fact that he was also a Puritan by religion, he was writing according to his own belief that was somewhere or the other penetrating in those era. Right? We see that thing happening there. And the culture that was being established, etc. The way Milton talks about it in Paradise Lost is one such thing. Okay? So, how literature influence भी करता है उस time के चीजों को. Why? Because literature can help in bringing changes in the society, but it is somewhere or the other also influenced by whatever is happening around it. तो writer अगर लिख रहा है तो उनके आसपास जो भी हो रहा है, that is something which is reflected in that particular work, right? Collaboration with other disciplines are also there. It draws on other factors such as history, sociology, anthropology, cultural studies as well. Cultural materialism is also a field which is somewhere or the other इसी time पे emerge हुई थी जब new historicism आया था. The interdisciplinary nature enriches the literary analysis of any work. We will be shortly taking a look at other examples from literature as well to make things easier for you all. Now, इस टाइम पे ना अगर आप लोगों को मैं और चीजों की एग्जांपल दूं, I told you about core texts. There is also which Greenblatt, who is the father of Historicism, talks about and gives the term anecdotes. Anecdotes are small accounts. These small accounts could be in the form of oral or written forms as well. राइट चलते फिरते कोई फेरी टेल सुना दी, कोई फोक लोर सुना दी, कोई फोक टेल सुना दी, दैट कुड बी समथिंग व्हिच कैन बी कंसिडर्ड एज सम सॉर्ट ऑफ एनेक्डोट, right? So we see that how during these times now the writers were saying we of course will read the mainstream literature, but just to enhance and just to see how the history and culture of an age also influences the writer or is influenced by the writer, we are going to propose a new field that is by the name new historicism. ठीक है, तो हम हिस्ट्री को तो पढ़ेंगे, हिस्ट्री को समझेंगे, हिस्ट्री कैसे इन्फ्लुएंस करती है, but how in a newer sense. Why am I using the word new here? Because we are also going to talk about old historicism as well. ठीक है, close study of historical, social and cultural conditions of a literary production. Illuminating meaning, understanding context enhance the interpretation of a text. Now, why during any times, किसी भी टाइम पे अगर हम बात करें, जैसे अभी I was giving you an example of Milton here only. Why was he writing the way he was writing during those ages? Why? We see that Pope Alexander Pope जो थे, he was a Catholic, and he was a Catholic in a nation which was a Protestant. He was a Catholic in a Protestant nation. So just imagine what would have been the plight of Pope. Number one तो ये चीज थी that he was one such person who was small in height. थोड़ा कूप निकला हुआ था, he was small in height. तो एक उसकी वजह से females were not attracted to him. Second reason was him being a Catholic. So how the culture of that particular age, even if he was a very very prominent figure during those times as well, and आज के time पे भी with his prominent works like Essay on Criticism, Essay on Man, The Rape of the Lock, we see that he was not a very famous person as compared to his contemporaries. His contemporaries also did not like him much because they mostly were Protestants, and Protestants Catholics के against होते थे. So you see how during these times पे चीजें आ रही हैं. ठीक है, फिर हम Defoe देखते हैं. इसी time पे we also talk about Defoe. Defoe is talking about the dissenters, right? He is not having some sort of affiliation with the church. On the other hand, we see Jonathan Swift having some sort of affiliation with the church. And you also see, अगर मैं यहीं पे आप लोग के साथ Jonathan Swift की बात करूं, Jonathan Swift was a person who used to write many satires. And one such satire that he wrote was A Modest Proposal, right? Where, because he was a person who was from Ireland. And during the age of Pope, the Irish people were not treated nicely by the English people. So he, in the Modest Proposal, said that जो बच्चे हैं Ireland के, we should, help the English population. How? हम आयरलैंड की पॉपुलेशन भी कम कर देंगे, बच्चों को खा के उनकी रेसिपीज, उनका मीट देते हैं इंग्लिश पीपल को, राइट? सो हाउ वी सी that this person is trying to satirize the scathing, some sort of scathing satire or savage criticism is being done on his part, historically and culturally. Even if he was an Irish, he was much and more English in his ways, right? And being on or seeing that the Irish people are not being treated nicely, that is a cultural and historical setting during the age of Pope, we see him writing satires on the English people for their treatment of the Irish. इस वजह से I am telling you that historically this thing works like that. New historicism tries to uncover these meanings. New historicism explores power structures within literature, and it reflects and can shape political realities. How? Anytime as we try to talk about Marxist criticism, or anything like that, that is related to shaping any sort of political reality, we see new historicism also paving its way in there. It tries to somewhere or the other uncover who is at the powerful position and tries to, bring things forward in that particular context. So here I have tried to incorporate old historicism and new historicism for you all here. I will try to increase the size here a little bit just for the information part. So old historicism was much and more focused on historical facts and events, just focusing on the context of a situation ki history mein ye cheezein hui. That is what is old historicism. New historicism started saying that how culture, social context surrounding literature. Here, literature was not, somewhere or the other that much important. Here, literature holds importance, but literature, new historicism में चाहे आप banking receipts देख लो, if you see diary entries of a particular age, if William Shakespeare's works are important in the Elizabethan age, if any person has written a diary even, or has written one note, that note would also hold the same importance as William Shakespeare's work, because this note is also going to tell us about the cultural, historical, social positions or history of that particular time, as is Shakespeare's, right? Tends to be more traditional, emphasizing historical accuracy. So basically old historicism talks about history. It talks about context majorly. Here we will take core texts, right? Embraces a more interdisciplinary approach, drawing from various disciplines. We talked about anthropology, we talked about history, we talked about cultural studies. Literature as a reflection of historical truths. But in new historicism, we see literature as influenced by and influencing the historical and cultural conditions. How it can make changes, how it is also changed by whatever is happening around it, right? Narrow historical context hota hai in old historicism. Broader scope, examining the interconnectedness of literature and various contexts, plus various other kinds of pieces of literature as well. जिसमें anecdotes भी आ जाते हैं, which could be oral or written, small, any stories which are there. May not delve deeply into power structure, but new historicism develops and delves in that. Primarily seeks to reveal historical truth in literature. But new historicism talks about multiple interpretations. That's why it also gives us this particular stance of thinking about things from a new perspective. कि अगर आप शेक्सपियर का वर्क पढ़ रहे हो, आप किसी की डायरी एंट्री पढ़ रहे हो और दोनों में सेम तरीके की सोसाइटी दी गई है, और मे बी इफ वी सी सम अदर सॉर्ट ऑफ सोसाइटी ड्यूरिंग द एलिजाबेथन एज ओनली, द इंटरप्रिटेशंस कुड बी मल्टीप्लाइड, right? Can be more rigid. This embraces new historicism, embraces flexibility. Wherever you will see, multiple interpretation, suddenly there will be flexibility also, which will peep in, right? So here, old historicism, we have people like E.H. Carr, Leopold von Ranke, who are traditional historians. And in new historicism, the major figure is Stephen Greenblatt, Michel Foucault. We also have other theorists by the name Louis Montrose and Jonathan as well, right? We have Jonathan as well. These are the people who are also important, correct? So you need to read more about them. We will be discussing about them in the upcoming videos. Now let's just take a look at the example here. Number one is William Shakespeare's Macbeth, right? New historicism can analyze Macbeth in the context of political climate during the reign of James the First as well, because James the First की reign भी कुछ इतनी अच्छी नहीं हुई थी. The play reflects anxieties about power, ambition, and the consequences of political instability. How, if there is some sort of political instability that is peeping in during a particular social construct, social statement अगर हम देखते हैं या social aspect में, we see how it is going to reflect on the literature, how is it going to have some sort of negativity as well that is there. Then we see Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice. Now Pride and Prejudice, the opening lines are very important, right? If we talk about it here, we understand Austen कैसे वहां पे दिखाती हैं social norms के बारे में. She brings about the class structures that are there. Even if you would not have read it, अगर आप लोग ने इसका period drama या अगर आप लोग ने इसका you would have watched the movie as well, you would make sense of it, right? Gender roles, that how females and males were being treated during the Regent era, right? They are all critiqued in Austen's work. The novel can be seen as a commentary on the societal expectations of the time. और यहाँ पे marriage is also something which was very important for a woman, for a man to do, right? With a fortune, correct? So mamas usually used to find boys which are very rich because that was something which was somewhere or the other going to be a status symbol. Then we see Chinua Achebe's Things Fall Apart. Here, this work is majorly important for its post-colonial Nigerian and colonialism context, that how the British people have colonized the different colonies and what impact did it have on them, right? The Igbo society is there and how tradition inka change ho raha hai. We can also not just Things Fall Apart, but the other book, two books which fall in this particular trilogy that is there, correct? Then we have the last example, Margaret Atwood's The Handmaid's Tale. Here we can see this is a dystopian novel. What is a dystopian novel? A dystopian novel is some sort of novel which somewhere or the other tries to talk about anarchy, which tries to talk about the chaos. Ideal society से opposite होती है. So if you would have read the summary of this particular work, you will know what context I am trying to establish in here. Feminist movements and political developments of the late 20th century can be seen as a reflection on power, gender and societal control, that how they were handmaids during these times who were supposed to indulge physically with their masters and they had to produce children, right? So all these things which were happening around the world, we can see that how the literature also reflects the same thing and the other pieces of literature as well will reflect the same thing. Which brings me to the end of this video with a very powerful statement by Louis Montrose. He said, and you'll have to learn more about it, the textuality of history and historicity of text. What is the meaning of it? If you know, you can drop it down in the comment section below and I will try to reply for sure. Thank you so much and have a good day. Bye-bye.